This video is intended to complement your reading about 19th century European music and Gustav Mahler, one of its most important conductors and composers. The video provides a brief introduction to Mahler's career and symphonic approaches, centering around his Second Symphony. Do also read the essay by David Pickett, which is available for you on the course website. As noted in the video about Richard Wagner, Mahler was one of many prominent conductors of the late 19th and early 20th centuries who sometimes retouched Beethoven's symphonies for modern performance. Gustav Mahler is sometimes known as the first modern conductor, and he used his baton and position on the podium to urge his orchestras to more expressive interpretations, as you can see in the caricatures on the screen. Mahler emerged as the leading composer after Brahms and Bruckner from the works that he wrote during the off-season summer months. As a composer, Mahler worked in the shadow of Beethoven, much as had Brahms, Schumann, and Berlioz before him. Mahler's music is known for its lyricism. As we shall see, German folk song strongly influenced all of his compositions, instrumental and vocal music alike. Mahler's wider engagement with literature and philosophy led to works that also engage extra-musical ideas. It seems to contribute to his conception of the symphony, as when Mahler wrote that, quote, "To write a symphony is to construct a world." Mahler also had a strong grasp of musical irony, as we will note on a later screen. Perhaps the most musically unique aspect of Mahler's music is that it employs some of the largest orchestral forces in the symphonic tradition. Equally significant is the fact that although Mahler wrote for large orchestras, he rarely employed all instruments at the same time. On your screen, you see many of Mahler's most significant compositions. These works reflect Mahler's interest in merging poetic and musical concerns. Mahler's 9 symphonies also ground themselves in extra-musical sources, folk poetry, and vocal music, as can be seen from the overview on this screen. The slow movement of the First Symphony, for example, was inspired by the ironic woodcut of Moritz Schwindt. In apparent efforts to translate this irony into music, Mahler set the tune that you might know of as Frère Jacques, Bruder Jakob, or Brother John in a minor mode. Although initially acknowledging the connections between Schwindt's woodcuts, German folk song, and the symphony, Mahler later suppressed the program. Like many of his time, he was concerned that an explicit program might limit listeners' musical imaginations. Mahler's Second Symphony was his most popular symphony during his lifetime and has continued to be an audience favorite. The composer subtitled the work Resurrection, based on its use of a poem by the same name by the Romantic Friedrich Gottlieb Klopstock. As in much 19th century literature, art, and music, the theme of resurrection evokes a diverse and eclectic assortment of resurrection-related ideas. The first movement of the symphony, for example, seems to conjure up a funeral march. Indeed, Mahler initially performed just this movement, calling it his Totenfeier. The form of the movement responds to the dynamics of sonata form, using, however, theme groups and distantly related keys, where Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven would have used single themes and tonic dominant or tonic relative major tonal palettes. The second movement, an Andante moderato, is perhaps the most simple movement of the symphony. The symphony's third movement, in ruhig fließender Bewegung, is a rondo-like structure that uses a meandering accompanimental figure from a song that Mahler was composing at the time. The song that influenced this movement was based on a story about St. Anthony of Padua, who, after being ignored by the heretics of his day, set to preaching along the shoreline, where he attracted a great congregation of fish. We know from Mahler's letters that the composer heard in the story the ironies of modern life. He took the St. Anthony text from Das Knabenwunderhorn. Das Knabenwunderhorn, or The Boy's Magic Horn, was a collection of German folk poetry that was first published in the first decade of the 19th century. Mahler would set several poems from the collection over his career. In fact, the fourth movement of the symphony is a setting for alto and orchestra of another of the poems from The Boy's Magic Horn. The text of Irrlicht, or Primeval Light, looks to a loving God and eternal bliss in the midst of the trials of human life. This extremely beautiful movement uses an ABA form and is set in D-flat major. The final movement of the symphony lasts for over 30 minutes and might be thought of as a cantata for soloists, chorus, and orchestra. Mahler used the first 8 lines of Klopstock's poem Auferstehung, or Resurrection, and then wrote the remaining 26 lines himself. The movement's shift from its C minor beginning to its E flat major conclusion may be considered one way in which Mahler conveys his idea of resurrection. The form is sectional, based on performing forces and its text. With that note, we conclude our brief discussion of Mahler and his music. Before you move on to another video, you should listen to Mahler's Second Symphony, score in hand. You can find a score on imslp.org and numerous recordings on YouTube. If you can, listen to Sir George Solti and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra perform the composition. More recently, Michael Tilson Thomas and the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra have issued a fine recording of the work as well.